So far in the Behind the Beauty series, we've talked about several brands who've been involved in plenty of controversies. From Anita Roddick allegedly stealing the entire concept of the Body Shop from an already existing company, to Drunk Elephant using burner accounts to attack their competitors, and Sunday Riley writing fake reviews on Sephora.com. But the brand we're talking about today takes the idea of controversy to a whole new level. L'Oreal are one of the biggest and oldest names in the beauty industry, but they're also arguably the most controversial. The list of things this brand has been criticized for is almost never ending, including one of the most high-profile scandals in French history, a founder with abhorrent political connections, and so much more. After today's video, you will probably never see L'Oreal the same way ever again. Chapter 1. The early days of L'Oreal. The start of L'Oreal's long journey to dominance in the beauty world came when a young French chemist named Eugène Schueller invented a hair dye which at the time was safer and more effective than the majority of options currently on the market in 1907, which were mostly lead-based. Schueller named his new hair dye L'Oreal, based on the name of the popular hairstyle in France at the time, probably butchered that, and began selling it to local hair salons in Paris, developing and manufacturing the product from his own home at first. The hair dye proved very popular amongst Parisians, their hairdressers, and after 2 years of solid sales, Schueller founded his company, naming it Société Française de Teintes Inoffensives pour Cheveux. I did French in school, and you could tell I passed with flying colors. Or in English, the Safe Hair Dye Company of France. Very catchy, very good there. Luckily for everyone involved, the name later changed to L'Oreal in 1939. Schueller was just 28 years old when he founded what would go on to become the largest beauty brand in the world. Despite the ridiculously long name, the brand continued to grow and was becoming more and more popular, not just throughout France, but Europe as well. Right from the start, L'Oreal was driven by science, and Schueller placed a lot of emphasis on research and development, enabling him to regularly introduce new and innovative products to the market. This innovation, along with Schueller's adoption of pioneering marketing strategies, helped the brand grow at a steady rate. The growth slowed, however, when Schueller left to serve in the French Army during World War I, but nevertheless in 1920, he was selling his products in 17 countries, including the United States and Russia. And at the end of World War I, he saw a period of rapid growth for the brand. The end of the war caused a massive evolution in women's fashion and hairstyles throughout Europe, with thousands of new hair salons opening up everywhere. And L'Oreal were ready to capitalize on the growing hair and beauty market, with their already massively popular range of hair products being added to, with innovative products such as Colorol, which was a hair color, Immediate Liquide, I'm so sorry for my French, which was a hair tint, and Eau Cap, which was a shampoo. Timely product innovations played a huge part in the brand's early growth, with Schueller seemingly having a knack for understanding the need of his customers and developing exactly what they needed, just when they needed it. One very prominent example of this was their launch of their first sunscreen product, Ombre Solaire, in 1935, just before the social revolution in France led to the introduction of paid vacation time for workers, which led to a high demand for sunscreen products and a spike in sales of Ombre Solaire. The late 1920s also saw the brand's first acquisition of another company, bath soap brand Monsavon. This was just the start for them though, as mergers and acquisitions would go on to become a key strategy for the brand and part of what helped make them the global powerhouse they are today. L'Oreal also became known for its really creative advertising and promotions which it used to sell their products. For example, in 1933, Schueller commissioned promotional posters from some of the most famous artists of the time. He also made use of radio jingles when they were still a relatively new phenomenon, and he even started a magazine for women called Votre Beauty, which went on to amass a readership of over 1 million women. His creativity eventually won him an advertising Oscar, which is apparently a thing, in 1953. All of these factors played a part in L'Oreal's continued growth, and the brand continued to expand throughout the 1930s and even into the 1940s. Even the start of World War II couldn't slow them down, as women throughout Europe and the world continued to purchase hair and beauty products in an effort to maintain morale. But it was around this time that a darker side of Eugène Schueller began to show itself. Schueller became a known fascist and Nazi sympathizer during the late 30s and early 40s. One of the companies he'd acquired, Valentine, was a large paint and varnish manufacturer, which he used to supply the German Navy with paint during the war. He was even a member of La Cagoule, a violent pro-fascist and anti-Semitic organization which supported collaboration with the Germans during their occupation of France. As a supporter of La Cagoule, Schueller provided financial support to the organization and even held meetings for the fascist group at his L'Oréal headquarters. Some of the crimes this group were responsible for include illegally transporting firearms, assassinating a former minister, and even firebombing multiple synagogues. These were awful people, and Schueller chose to be one of them. L'Oréal even hired several members of the group as executives after World War II ended, one of which, Jacques Corrèze, went on to serve as the CEO of their United States division. Schueller was also known to have connections to Helmut Knochen, the notorious commander of police and security for the SS intelligence service in France. He was actively involved in deporting French Jews to Nazi death camps and was responsible for the execution of thousands of French resistance fighters and civilians. He later confirmed that Schueller had helped him commit these acts and that Schueller was a voluntary collaborator. Many historians have said that Schueller and L'Oréal benefited greatly from the collaboration with the Nazis during World War II. In fact, Schueller's personal fortune grew 10 times larger between 1940 and 1943, and L'Oréal's sales quadrupled during the same time. Despite all this, Schueller managed to avoid any repercussions after the war ended through his wealth and connections, one of whom would go on to become the President of France. Chapter 2: Global Domination. The fact that Schueller managed to avoid being prosecuted for helping the Germans during the war meant that he was able to continue running his company, and a wave of new products, along with more clever marketing, helped people forget about this terrible, awful thing that he did during the war. The 1950s saw the brand hire a large number of research chemists and focus on creating innovative products to capitalize on the new wave of consumerism being seen after the war. These products included Immediate D, a lightning tint released in 1951, and Colorel, the first coloring shampoo introduced in 1955. The brand was helped by the popularity of blonde movie idols such as Marilyn Monroe, Brigitte Bardot, who helped drive the demand for hair dye. The company had somehow managed to successfully navigate the end of World War II, despite the terrible things their founder had done. Schueller wouldn't get to see his company's success continue though, as he died in 1957, being replaced by Francois Dow. L'Oréal had been popular up until now and was still growing, and Dow helped the brand continue its growth towards being the biggest beauty company in the world. He achieved this largely through a strategy of aggressively acquiring other companies, a trait which has become a key component of L'Oréal today. Under Dow, L'Oréal's acquisitions and mergers included Lancôme in 1964, Garnier in 1965, Biotherm in 1970, and half a dozen other brands, both in the beauty space and in other industries. Dow's tenure also saw the brand expand into the healthcare market in 1973 when it acquired Synth-Labo, a company specializing in cardiovascular medication and other products. And he later added Metabio Julie, a manufacturer of common over-the-counter drugs and dietary products. When L'Oréal combined the two companies under the same name, Synth-Labo, in 1980, it made it the third largest pharmaceutical company in France. The 70s and 80s also saw L'Oréal become a pioneer in launching their hair color products for the mass markets, with the Excellence Creme line and Casting Creme Gloss becoming iconic in the 1980s. And the company also launched its first skincare line, Plenitude, now L'Oréal Paris Skincare, which became incredibly popular still to this day. In 1984, Francois Dahl stepped down as CEO of L'Oréal, though he remained chair of the company's strategic committee. Charles Fiake took over CEO. Sorry, I tried to Google how to say his name properly and I can't find it anywhere. I hope that's correct. He took over as CEO, but he would only be doing the job for a few years before being succeeded by Lindsay Owen-Jones. And it was Owen-Jones who really took L'Oréal to another level, transforming them into the world's largest cosmetic brand during his time in charge. In the 1990s and 2000s, under the leadership of Owen-Jones, L'Oréal grew exponentially, with a major focus on expanding further into international markets, especially in the United States States and Asia. Owen Jones achieved this in part by continuing Dow's policy of acquisitions and mergers, with the company acquiring Cosmere, Maybelline New York, Soft Sheen, Kiehl's, The Body Shop, and more during his tenure. And all their acquisitions had a specific purpose in mind to help them expand. Maybelline would go on to become the global leader in makeup. The acquisition of Kiehl's helped them expand their prestige skincare offerings. Soft Sheen allowed them to make a strong entry into the African American hair market, and The Body Shop gave them a foot into the growing ethical and natural beauty segment. During this time, L'Oreal would also turn to radio and television to promote its products and hired prominent actresses, models, and other personalities as models for print and TV advertising. And this renewed focus on advertising would pay off massively for the brand, helping to gain new fans all over the world. The most famous example of this being the global campaign they launched in 1998. Why did I say it like that? 1998, featuring their new iconic line, "Because I'm Worth It." L'Oreal also focused heavily on research and development during this time, investing in technology to create advanced skincare and hair care solutions. They also introduced products with more personalized beauty solutions like the Vichy and La Roche-Posay Dermo Cosmetics line. Some of L'Oreal's most defining products were launched during this time period as well, such as their Paris Excellence Creme, one of the best-selling hair color products globally, known for its ammonia-free formula, and L'Oreal Revitalift. This was like a groundbreaking anti-aging product that set the standard for L'Oreal's skincare offerings. Maybelline's Great Lash Mascara, which is an iconic product in the beauty industry, which became synonymous with affordable yet high-quality makeup. And so, a century after being founded, L'Oreal had finally reached their goal of global domination, firmly cementing themselves as one of the largest and most iconic beauty brands and conglomerates really of all time. Chapter 3: The Battencourt Affair. Owen Jones's time as chairman hadn't come without any bumps in the road, however, as towards the end of his time in charge, the company experienced one of its largest scandals to date, becoming an ordeal that not only affected L'Oreal, but French politics and the nation at large. To understand the Battencourt Affair, we have to go back a little bit. We have to go back in the timeline to when L'Oreal founder Eugène Schueller died in 1957. Now, after his death, his daughter Liliane Battencourt inherited the majority of his company. This made her one of the world's wealthiest women, with L'Oreal playing a central role in her wealth. For many years, Battencourt lived a relatively private life, just alone with her massive fortune. However, as she aged, controversies surrounding her mental state and finances began to surface, sparking the now infamous Battencourt Affair. So it all started in 2007 when Liliane Battencourt's only daughter, Françoise Battencourt Myers, filed a lawsuit against François-Marie Bannier, I'm going to say, a celebrity photographer and close confidant of Liliane Battencourt. Bannier had developed a deep relationship with the aging heiress, who lavished him with gifts estimated to be worth nearly €1 billion. These gifts included expensive artworks, life insurance policies, real estate, and cash donations. Now, Battencourt Myers had always disliked Bannier because her mother gave him so much attention she felt she never got from her own mother. But her decision to file criminal proceedings against the photographer came after one of her mother's employees overheard Liliane Battencourt and Bannier talking about a plan for Liliane to legally adopt him as her son. So this was the final straw for Battencourt Myers. She accused Bannier of exploiting her mother's vulnerability and alleged that he manipulated her into giving him these extravagant gifts. She also claimed that her mother, who was then in her mid-80s, was not in a fit state to manage her financial affairs. So Battencourt Myers tried to have her mother declared mentally unfit and to block Bannier's influence over her mother's finances. But Liliane Battencourt denied her daughter's claims and stood by Bannier, defending him as a close friend. She claimed her daughter was actually interfering in her private life and that she gave all these gifts out of free will. She wasn't forced or tricked into doing anything. The dispute led to a public feud between mother and daughter, causing a media frenzy in France. The French media closely followed the legal proceedings, which exposed intimate details of Liliane Battencourt's finances and personal life. In 2008, the mother and daughter reached a temporary reconciliation, with Battencourt Myers withdrawing the lawsuit, but tensions remained beneath the surface. But in 2010, the scandal exploded again when Lillian Battencourt's former butler, Pascal Bonnefoy, secretly recorded over 29 hours of conversations between Lillian Battencourt and her advisors. These recordings revealed troubling details about her financial dealings and mental state. The tapes allegedly picked up conversations between Lillian and her financial advisor, which indicated that she may have avoided paying taxes by keeping a large amount of money in undeclared Swiss bank accounts. The tapes also allegedly captured a conversation between Lillian Battencourt and Eric Woerth, the then French Minister of Labour, who was trying to convince Lillian to give his wife a job managing Battencourt's wealth. This sparked a major controversy as Woerth, as acting budget minister, was running a high-profile campaign to catch wealthy tax evaders. What made it worse was that Lillian Battencourt later received a €30 million tax rebate while Woerth was a budget minister. And the scandal got even worse in July of 2010 when Lillian Battencourt's former accountant alleged in an interview with the French investigative website Mediapart that multiple French politicians were frequently given envelopes stuffed with cash at Battencourt's mansion. She also claimed that Eric Woerth was given an envelope containing €150,000 in cash in March of 2007 to go towards the presidential campaign of Nicolas Sarkozy. Political donations in France are limited to €7,500 for political parties and €4,600 for individuals. Contributions above €150 must be paid by check, with the donor clearly identified. This became a major political scandal when it was revealed that other members of Nicolas Sarkozy's administration may have also received illegal donations from Lillian Battencourt during his 2007 presidential campaign. Sarkozy himself was then also accused of accepting envelopes of cash, which he denied. However, Battencourt's butler testified that Mr. Sarkozy was a regular visitor to her home during his 2007 campaign, and he was later charged with taking advantage of Miss Battencourt by accepting cash from her when she was too frail to know what she was doing. Interestingly, in October 2010, a string of burglaries took place, targeting the offices of 3 newspapers which had been reporting on the scandal. The burglary had involved the theft of laptops belonging to the journalists who were handling the Woerth-Battencourt affair, as well as the theft of CDs containing the wiretaps of Lillian Battencourt. Culprits were never found, but it's worth noting that the charges against the French president Nicolas Sarkozy, were later dropped due to lack of evidence. Not suspicious at all, right? As Lillian Battencourt's health declined, concerns about her mental capacity grew, and in 2011, after medical evaluations indicated that she was suffering from Alzheimer's, a court ruled that Lillian Battencourt was no longer fit to manage her own affairs. So her daughter, Francoise Battencourt Myers, was granted legal guardianship over her mother, effectively taking control of her mother's fortune and removing Francois-Marie Bannier from her life. And in 2015, Francois-Marie Bannier was convicted of abuse of weakness of Lillian Battencourt. The prosecutor on the case stated that Bannier had imposed his control over her like a spider spinning its web. And once he had her in his nest, he never let her go. She became his thing. He dealt with her like a vampire. Bannier was sentenced to 2.5 years in prison and ordered to pay €158 million in damages to Lillian Battencourt. 7 other defendants, including Lillian Battencourt's financial advisor, lawyer, and notary, were also convicted and given lesser sentences. The Battencourt affair was extremely damaging to the reputation of the Battencourts and L'Oreal. It dragged on for almost a decade, and by the time it was all over, all their dirty laundry had been laid out on display for the world to see. And I'm bringing it up again. Chapter 4, A Legacy of Controversy. And to be honest, there are far too many controversies for me to talk about in one video because the list is almost endless. Over the years, they've been involved in multiple discrimination lawsuits based on race. One example is that a former L'Oreal sales manager, Elise Janowitz, who sued the company for retaliatory termination after she refused to fire an employee based on the color of their skin and appearance. Janowitz was a regional sales manager for L'Oreal at Macy's in San Jose, California, and she claimed that after a visit from Jack Wiswall, who was L'Oreal's L'Oreal's general manager for designer fragrances, Wiswall instructed her to fire a dark-skinned female sales associate because he did not find the woman to be sufficiently physically attractive. Wiswall apparently expressed a preference for fair-skinned blondes and directed Janowitz to get me somebody hot. Janowitz obviously didn't agree with this order, but also didn't want to report it to HR and get labeled as a troublemaker essentially, so she just ignored it at the time. However, when Wiswall returned to the store, he discovered that the sales associate had not been dismissed. He again told Janowitz that he wanted the associate fired and basically complained that she had failed to fire her. On his way out, he passed a young, attractive blonde girl and turned to Janowitz saying, "God damn it, get me one that looks like that." Janowitz rightly still refused to fire the employee, and on several further occasions when Wiswall told her to terminate the employee, she asked him to give her adequate justification for dismissing her. Janowitz claims that after her refusal to fire the employee, her managers retaliated against her, giving her poor evaluations, undermining her position, and changing her routine. She later resigned from L'Oreal, citing unreasonable stress. This led to her lawsuit against the brand, which brought the actions of the company's management team to light. But this wasn't the only time race was an issue for the brand, as they also faced discrimination lawsuits in France related to the hiring of spokesmodels and institutional racism. In July of 2007, the Garnier division and external employment agency were fined €30,000 for recruitment practices that intentionally excluded women of color from promoting its hair wash Fructic Style. The brand has also received criticism based on claims of false advertising. In May of 2007, they were one of several cosmetics manufacturers who were ordered by the Therapeutic Goods Administration in Australia to withdraw advertising regarding the wrinkle removal capabilities of their products because they were vastly exaggerated. Here in the UK, L'Oreal has faced criticism from Ofcom regarding the truth of their advertising and marketing campaigns, particularly concerning product performance of one of their mascara brands. In July of 2007, the British Advertising Standards Authority attacked L'Oreal for a television advert on its telescopic mascara featuring Penelope Cruz, stating it'll make your eyelashes 60% longer, when in fact it only made the lashes look 60% longer by separating and thickening at the roots and by thickening the tips of the lashes, mascara. They also failed to state that the model was wearing false eyelashes in the advert. And I believe this led to a whole thing where even now to this day, if you still read magazines, brands have to say if false lashes have been used in the advert. They usually say like styled with false lashes. That was never a thing. Can you believe that before this happened? And in June of 2014, the company reached an agreement with the US Federal Commission not to make claims about its anti-aging products unless it had credible scientific evidence supporting those claims. The settlement followed an investigation by the commission into claims being made in relation to two products, which the commission described as false and unsubstantiated. The brand also faced nearly 60 US lawsuits in 2022 alone, claiming their hair relaxer products cause cancer and other health problems. The lawsuits alleged the company knew their products contained dangerous chemicals, but marketed and sold them anyway. And later that year, the campaigners in the UK started calling for the cosmetics company to withdraw its hair straightening products that are largely used by Black women after research linked it to an increased risk of cancer. The campaign followed some scientific research that claimed to show an association between the use of chemical hair straighteners containing sodium hydroxide or caustic soda. A 2022 study by the US National Institute of Health found that women who use such products several times a year were more than twice as likely to develop uterine cancer. It's important to note, however, that a lawsuit doesn't always mean there is a very real issue, but this is actually a topic that I'd like to dive into a lot deeper at another time. It could be its own whole video. They've also been on the end of a patent lawsuit from the University of Massachusetts for using UMass patented technology for skin creams with the chemical adenosine. They've been fined in France for illegal price fixing on personal hygiene products, and they've even received criticism for continuing to employ Amber Heard as a brand ambassador after the very well publicized court case with her husband Johnny Depp. The list of issues just go on and on and on. I can't go on for 5 hours because it will go on for 5 hours. Chapter 5: The complicated topic of animal testing. One controversy I do want to talk about in more detail, however, is the brand's stance on animal testing. I feel like this may trigger a few people. It's an issue which has been a major source of criticism for the brand, with one notable example being their 2006 purchase of The Body Shop, which did not support animal testing. The Body Shop's founder, Anita Roddick, was forced to defend herself against allegations of abandoning her principles over L'Oreal's involvement in animal testing, and it resulted in many boycotting The Body Shop for years due to their links to L'Oreal. You can go and watch the Body Shop video, I talk about it more. L'Oreal's history with animal testing is a complicated one, and they've been well known for decades as a brand which does allow its products and ingredients to be tested on animals, despite their many attempts to trick consumers into believing otherwise. Their website claims, and I quote, "Since 1989, we have not tested the safety of our products on animals, 14 years before regulations required us to do so." That statement would have most customers believe that L'Oreal are definitely a cruelty-free brand and that they were something of a trendsetter in that regard. However, it's an incredibly misleading statement. The reality of L'Oreal's stance on animal testing is a very different story. L'Oreal did start in vitro tissue testing back in 1979 as an alternative to animal testing, and they did stop testing their own products on animals in 1989. But even after that decision, some of their ingredients they used were still tested on animals by third parties, and they were still using ingredients which had previously been tested on animals, so technically not 100% cruelty-free. It's this kind of deliberately misleading wording that many critics of the brand have a problem with. Saying that you stopped testing your own products on animals back in 1989 and leaving it at that makes most consumers and customers who don't look any further than the surface level believe that L'Oreal must be a cruelty-free brand. But they do this by conveniently leaving out a further detail about how they still use ingredients which were tested on animals, and how they still allow testing to be done by regulatory bodies in other countries if required, such as in China. The brand has slowly changed their policy, or at least the wording of it, over the years, while still looking for every loophole they could find. Cruelty Free Kitty, a website which looks into the cruelty-free claims of brands around the world, reported in 2019 that L'Oreal's FAQ sheet on animal testing said, "When a supplier proposes us an ingredient, we ask to examine its safety dossier. The dossier contains data generated by the means of animal testing before March of 2013. L'Oreal can retain the ingredient. If the data was generated after March of 2013, but was for a usage other than cosmetics, then L'Oreal can retain the ingredient." Cruelty Free Kitty pointed out that this still allows L'Oreal to use animal tested ingredients in their formulations for new products, and that the brand has a history of disguising its cosmetics as drugs, having even been sued by the FDA over misleading ads regarding this. They use this as a loophole to trick people into thinking they are cruelty free. If they said that their products were for medical use, then they could still use ingredients which had been tested on animals after March of 2013. They're not the only brand to do this. To be fair, it's a common practice. That's not an excuse. And they did all this while having the audacity to run ads claiming to be a cruelty-free brand. Now, L'Oreal later changed the animal testing statement on their website to say, L'Oreal no longer tests its ingredients on animals and no longer tolerates any exception to this rule, before immediately going on to contradict that statement by telling us the exception to the rule. They say certain health authorities may nevertheless decide to conduct animal tests themselves for certain cosmetic products, as it is still in the case of China. We know all that. To L'Oreal's credit, they have been involved in a lot of research to develop new methods of testing which don't involve animals, and they have worked alongside the Chinese authorities and scientists to get alternative testing methods recognized in the country. And they have played a huge role in the changing of the law in China when it comes to testing on animals. They pioneered the development of human reconstructed skin that can be used to evaluate how cosmetic ingredients and products behave on human skin, and they currently manufacture different types of reconstructed human skin in their EpiSkin labs in France, China, and Brazil, also making this technology available to governments, organizations, and other companies for testing purposes so that they also do not have to test on animals. And in addition to the skin models, they have developed non-animal predictive assessment tools such as molecular modeling, expert toxicology systems, imaging techniques, and lots more. and their scientists continue to work on new non-animal testing methods and technologies, including exploring the use of artificial intelligence. For over a decade, L'Oreal has engaged directly with the China National Medical Products Administration, which oversees cosmetics regulation, to help integrate alternative testing methods into their regulatory frameworks. They have also established a significant research presence in China, setting up R&D centers that work specifically on developing cosmetic products for the Chinese market and conducting research into alternative testing methods. One notable example of this being the Shanghai Episkin Center, which they set up back in 2014 to help provide the necessary scientific tools needed to develop alternatives to animal testing with collaboration from Chinese scientists. It's undeniable that L'Oreal has invested a large amount into research and development to develop new cruelty-free testing methods over the last few decades, and they have also played a part in the changes in the Chinese testing policy over the years, including the most recent changes which relaxed China's testing requirements even further. However, despite all this positive work, the basic truth is that L'Oreal are not and have never been a truly cruelty-free brand. They have always refused to adopt a company-wide policy against testing on animals and continue to sell their products where it is required by law in China. Animal rights organization PETA, who I don't love, but they sum up L'Oreal's policy pretty well. They say L'Oreal still chooses to sell cosmetics in China that are required by law to be tested on animals. While the Chinese government has relaxed some of the provisions of the animal testing requirements for cosmetics, it still requires that cosmetic companies pay for painful and deadly tests on animals in order to sell certain types of cosmetics. Although some of L'Oreal's products currently being sold in China may no longer be subject to requirements for tests on animals, L'Oreal admits that some of the products it sells there are required by law to be tested on animals. L'Oreal's carefully worded policy statement only claims that the company itself does not conduct the tests on animals. L'Oreal does not deny that it pays the Chinese government to test its products on animals. Chapter 6: The Future of L'Oreal. L'Oreal's reputation could easily have been so different if the brand had just refused to sell their products in China until the country changed their animal testing laws. Lots of brands have done this successfully and are still very successful. They have undoubtedly been a pioneer in developing new testing methods, and they remain one of the most innovative beauty companies in the world to this day. The company has successfully adapted to evolving beauty trends, including sustainability, diversity, and personalized beauty. They embraced e-commerce and digital marketing, investing heavily in online sales channels and technologies such as augmented reality for virtual makeup try-ons. The acquisition of Modiface in 2018, a leader in augmented reality beauty solutions, helped propel L'Oreal into the digital future of beauty tech. L'Oreal has also committed to sustainability with initiatives like Sharing Beauty with All, which launched in 2013, which was aimed at reducing the company's carbon footprint, water usage, and waste production. Sorry, I've been talking for so long, I can't get my words out properly. They also focus on clean beauty through acquisitions like Yves Saint Laurent Beauty and the growth of brands like Giorgio Armani Beauty, which by clean we mean they have an emphasis on environmentally responsible practices, not clean. A large part of L'Oreal's success has always been down to its dedication to research and development, which they start right from the beginning. The company has hired thousands of scientists over the years to develop new products and improve established ones. Back in 1920, they had just 3 chemists on staff. This number has soared to 1,000 by 1984 and obviously has continued to grow since then. The company is still prolific when it comes to developing new methods and products. They even filed 610 new patents in 2023 alone. For all the positives, there have been just so many negatives. Yes, they've been one of the most innovative brands in the cosmetics industry for over a century, but they've also never been far from another scandal. In fact, the most recent controversy involving the brand came out early this year when the BBC released a documentary accusing L'Oreal of using child labor. The BBC documentary, titled Perfume's Dark Secret, revealed that children as young as 5 are picking jasmine in Egypt for leading beauty brands including Lancome, who are owned by L'Oreal. The BBC said in a statement that they visited Egypt's jasmine region during the harvest season in the summer of 2023 and found children, some as young as 5 years old, working in the jasmine fields that were supplying some global brands through factories. Egypt supplies about half of the global beauty supply of jasmine, which is among the most valuable perfume ingredients. The BBC actually claimed they witnessed children picking these flowers in Egypt that were sent to factories that supply scents for Lancome. They're idle intense. The documentary makers also say that the industry insiders told them that the handful of companies that own many luxury brands are squeezing budgets, resulting in very, very low pay. Egyptian jasmine pickers say this forces them to involve their children in order to make enough money just to survive. The companies, such as L'Oreal, just want the jasmine oil to be delivered at the lowest possible cost and then sell the end product at an exorbitant price. They set the budget for the perfume houses, and that gets passed down the chain until the suppliers are left with extremely low profit margins. L'Oreal could still make plenty of money while paying a reasonable price for their ingredients, but they're more interested in increasing profits than they are about human rights by the sounds of it. The BBC said that L'Oreal's response after being shown the evidence was not great at all. They allegedly said that despite very strong commitments, they know that in certain regions of the world where L'Oreal suppliers operate, certain products don't meet their commitments. They go on to say, however, we don't shrink our responsibilities and we are fully committed to make things evolve in the right way. That was vague as fuck, wasn't it? And kind of makes it sound like they already knew something was happening and they're like, oh yeah, like we're working on it kind of thing, but they're really just letting it happen. Like, go through that again. What were they even saying? And this is the real problem with the brand. Today, L'Oreal remains one of the world's largest cosmetic companies with a diverse portfolio covering mass market, professional, luxury, and active cosmetics. Their products are sold in more than 150 countries, and they continue to innovate in sustainable beauty, personalized skincare, and digital technology. But they've also proven over their century-long history that morals don't really come into the picture for the brand. They've done an unbelievable amount of reprehensible things since their foundation in 1909, much of which would have completely destroyed the reputation of other brands, especially in today's world, but somehow L'Oreal is still going strong. The question is, in an age where consumers expect a higher level of morality from the brands they support, how much longer can L'Oreal continue to get away with their never-ending list of controversies?